Hi everyone, my name is Adila. My group mates are Esther, Alessandra, Fantasia, and Kyra. And today we will be presenting our research proposal, Dating in Quarantine, the negative effects of quarantine on romantic relationships for couples.
First off, we would like to say thank you to everyone for your interest in our presentation. Before we officially start, we want to also give a small thank you towards Dr. Navarro for allowing us to research on an interesting topic during this time. While quarantine has provided both good and bad news in a unique way, this project allowed us to explore a new perspective on understanding relationships during the pandemic. We hope that our presentation will provide you that new perspective on understanding relationship outcomes during the pandemic as well. To start off, we must ask ourselves, why should we look at the negative effects of quarantine when it comes to relationships? This question is important to consider because quarantine impacted many individuals, particularly for those who lost their jobs or economic security, and for those who are facing personal vulnerabilities such as depression, anxiety, and stress. Due to the pandemic, we have to take into consideration of these factors as they will help us to understand the negative relationship outcomes, such as loss of communication, economic instability, and personal vulnerabilities, including depression, anxiety, and stress. While COVID is only a year old, we found a gap where not many studies have been conducted on the negative effects of relationships during quarantine. As for future work, we hope that there will be an exploratory study done on marginalized communities and the effects of their relationships during quarantine. A couple of trends that we found in previous studies was that many couples reported to be less satisfied with their relationships and had less intimate and sexual behaviors, such as lack of orgasms and feeling emotionally closed off with their partners.
The year of 2020 started off with slight concerns of everyone's health and safety when quarantine was officially announced in late March. As the pandemic caused fear and chaos globally, the quarantine itself brought up reflecting questions as to how it affects people's well-being, relationships, and education. Our research question extends to the negative effects on romantic relationships between young adults when they were placed in this environment. We are interested in examining whether quarantine negatively affected these relationships in their lives and led to breakups, strains in the relationships, quality time, and communication. Prior research studies indicated poor relationships functioning and behaviors amongst young adults during quarantine resulting in anxieties and higher levels of stress. Thus, while quarantine can be beneficial for everyone to avoid contact with the virus, the implications that it brings to modern dating can be poor to health. We chose to use a vulnerability stress adaptation model to conduct a cross-sectional survey on 100 college students examining two different factors. These variables are economic stress and pre-existing vulnerabilities. We hypothesized that couples that experience less vulnerabilities and stressors, who also develop effective adaptive processes, are likely to have higher relationship qualities. Similarly, couples that experience more vulnerabilities and stressors with developed adaptive processes may experience lower relationship qualities. So above in this first model is a model that we found made for a study on marital status and approval within these relationships. So hypothesized model below looks very similar. As you can see, the pre-existing vulnerabilities and economic stress combine with higher psychological distress and low resources to lead to negative effects on relationships during this quarantine.
One of the themes that we discovered throughout our literature review was pre-existing vulnerabilities, which can include depression, anxiety, and stress. With these pre-existing vulnerabilities, previous studies found that many individuals involved in relationships reported to experience these before and during quarantine. Overall, studies have indicated that while these vulnerabilities are present in the relationship before and during quarantine, the amount of overall stress the couples can feel can overwhelmingly affect their overall well-being. With quarantine set in place, this could potentially lead to more psychological distress, loss of communication skills, and lower satisfaction levels.
Since the COVID-19 pandemic has started, many individuals have begun to encounter economic instability. The VSA model proposed stress factors such as economic hardships, remote jobs, and disasters that may increase a hostile environment within couples. These COVID-19 stressors have led to lower quality relationships in which couples are at risk of experiencing conflict among each other and eventually creating some sort of tension and resentment. It tends to lead couples into getting a divorce, breakup, or engage in infidelity. Over time, these COVID-19 stressors have also caused a decrease in sexual relationship satisfaction, in which it caused some couples to experience dyadic stress and potentially provoke some individuals to engage in an affair with one or multiple individuals for emotional validation or sexual needs that the partner is not providing them. In addition to that, there has been a significant change in sexual activity, behavior, and commitment between partners as well. As this pandemic steered towards social distancing, remote jobs, and learning, individuals began to spend majority of their time at home with their families and partners, which resulted in a lack of privacy, intimate moment, and or an increase in arguments between couples. So with quarantine in place, are these negative effects of relationships due to factors of pre-existing vulnerabilities and economic stress? We hypothesize that with the unique use of the VSA model, couples during quarantine will experience negative effects within their relationships due to determinant factors such as pre-existing vulnerabilities and economic stress.
Going over the methods, we will survey college students who have been in a relationship in the last 8 to 9 months to determine the negative effects of quarantine on relationships. The scales we will use are the UCLA Loneliness Scale and the 10-item Center for Epidemiologic Studies Depression Scale, which will be distributed through Qualtrics. Our sample size will include 100 participants from CSULB using convenient sampling who are over the age of 18 and have been in a relationship in the last 8 to 9 months. There will be no requirements for gender or ethnicity. We will use 2 measures to find out if the participants have any pre-existing vulnerabilities. The first measure is the UCLA Loneliness Scale version 3. Some examples from this scale are how often do you feel alone and how often do you feel that your relationship with others are not meaningful, which can be answered through the 4-point Likert scale ranging from 1, which translates to I never feel this way, to 4, which translates to I always feel this way. Those who receive a higher score on the scale means that they feel more lonely. The second measure that will be used is the 10-item Center for Epidemiologic Studies Depression Scale. Some items from this scale are I was bothered by things that usually don't bother me, and I did not feel like eating, my appetite was poor, which can be answered through the 3-point Likert scale provided, which ranges from 0, which translates to rarely or none of the time, to 3, all of the time.
Procedures. So our time frame for the data collection will approximately be a month to collect all our data and for us to analyze it. The surveys will be online via Cortex, and overall the survey will take 10 minutes. So for our proposed data, we will analyze using Excel and SPSS. And our limitations. So a variable that we haven't mentioned is that there's no control group. And so due to that, there's no control group to compare any changes in relationships in absence of COVID-19 pandemic. Our limitations include that the studies are pretty recent and participants might not want to share intimate information. A confounding variable is that relationships before COVID-19 might also have problems prior to COVID. And so this is our reference slide. And so we just want to thank you again for your time and we hope you enjoyed our presentation.